leprosy that goes on your clothes. What we haven't discussed yet is the leprosy that goes on a person's house. And we're going to see leprosy at a person's house is unique, that the kohen, I believe, if I'm correct, we'll see inside, will quarantine the house, close up the house for 3 weeks to see if the taras will come back. If it's not growing, but it's not going away, and they take away the bricks and they replace it, and we'll see that in today's chumash. Very interesting. But also, we're going to learn about another kind of impurity. As the parsha concludes, Tazria Mitzayra concludes that there is a impurity that comes out of a person when he has an emission, or when he has a zav, he has a sickness that can clog up their artery a little bit, or it can be too fluid. We'll see about that. Or when a woman has her period, there are requirements for that the woman becomes impure at that point in time. Now, really, it's not really so relevant today because we're not going to the Beis Hamikdash and we don't have the truma, the percentage that we would give to the kohen today. So it's not really so relevant. But it is relevant for husband and wife being together. That's not really discussed in our parsha, but you'll see a lot of the laws, and that's mikveh will take away those things, and that's a big idea of studying mikveh today. So fascinating class on mikveh, and will really get us into the mindset and a lot of details about it. So stay tuned as we learn today's chumash. I'm not doing Tanya today because there's a lot to cover just in today's chumash. So today's class will just be the Friday and Shabbos section of this week's parsha, Tazria Mitzayra. It's a double parsha, my friends. Next week, I believe it's also a double parsha, Achrim Es Kedoshim, and we will conclude together next week the third book of the Torah. So I think it's pretty short. It went by pretty quick. We're going to conclude the third book of the Torah next week, so stay with us. But here we go. We're going to conclude Tazria Mitzayra, the Parshas Mitzayra. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe vel Aaron Leimer. Chapter 14 in Leviticus and Vayikra. Hashem commands Moshe and Aaron, Moses and Aaron, saying to them, Kisavai el haaretz, when you will come to the land of Israel, right? They're in the desert, and they're heading towards the Holy Land. I guess they don't know yet that they're going to be wandering there for another 38 years. I think they're still thinking they're going to go straight into Israel. When you come to the land of Canaan, right now it's Canaan, it's not called Israel yet because it's still the land of Canaan. That I'm going to give to you as an inheritance. Israel belonged to the Jewish people. What I'm going to do is, v'nasati nega taras the base eretz achuzaschem. I'm going to place leprosy on the houses that you are inheriting. I'm going to make the houses get leprosy. And he says that not just will leprosy come if they gossip, but Hashem will deliberately, it seems, even if not originally when they enter the lands of Israel, their houses will not break out with leprosy when they sin and they gossip, but Hashem will deliberately, Rashi says, very interesting, make the houses break out in leprosy. Why would Hashem do such a thing? And Rashi says, very interesting, is that it took the Jews a while to get to Israel, and you think the Goyim didn't know that the Jews were coming, the Amorites that were there, and for all those years, they were sticking gold into the walls of the house. I guess in the olden days, it was a common hiding place. They would open up shelves and stuff, hide it in the walls. They would plaster the walls and put the cement back up, and no one would have any idea that there's $1 million in his living room wall. He has $1 million worth of gold sitting in his living room wall. He has gems and whatever. So what Hashem did was very interesting. He made the walls grow leprosy, and we know what the laws that we're going to learn is that you got to take out the bricks. And all of a sudden he takes out the bricks and he sees he's got $1 million of gold, in a tremendous amount of gold or some gold hidden inside the walls, which you would never know of because the people that were there ran away and just left the gold over there. So this is actually interesting. It's actually a blessing that Hashem is not even waiting for it to happen, but Hashem is going to, not even waiting for you to gossip, to bring leprosy, but it's actually a nice thing that Hashem is doing by making you, you think you're losing your house, and meanwhile you're getting 2 houses or you're getting a tremendous amount of gold worth by making holes in your walls. Verse 35. So what happens? But now we're going back to leprosy here. What takes place? So the guy sees that there is leprosy in his wall. So the guy who owns the house sees these blotches. We're going to see the red and green blotches sunken into the wall. We'll see in a moment. So he goes to Yehuda And he says to Yehuda, he can't bring it to Yehuda's house, so he goes to Yehuda. And even if the guy's a Torah scholar, he doesn't have a right to start deciding if his house it has leprosy or not. Don't say anything. Do not make any decisions. Should not say. He goes to the Kohen and he says, Mr. Kohen. It doesn't say, Kohen, I for sure have leprosy in my house. No, you don't say that to the Kohen. You tell the Kohen something that looks kinega nearly babayis. There's some green and red. Even though he's sure of it, don't tell the Kohen I for sure have it. Say, Kohen, something looks to me, it appears to me that it might be leprosy on my house. So the Kohen should then start ordering. Yehuda would order and he would say, he says, get the moving company and clear out the house. Clear out the whole house. 1-800 got junk? Call the moving company. Guys with here we have a place called a van with a man. Call up the local moving company. Before the Kohen gets there, to come and inspect and to see the leprosy. Why? Because you don't want everything to be impure. Once the Kohen comes and determines that it's leprosy, anything in the house at that moment forward becomes impure. So you're going to actually, can imagine, like, get the couches out, all the furniture, get it out of the house. And only after that, the Kohen will come to see the house, will come and he'll make the checking and the inspection that he needs to make. Now, Rashi says something very interesting. He says, listen, what are we afraid of that the Kohen, you want to get out of the house before the Kohen gets there? What are you afraid of? If it's food, so all the food in the refrigerator of the guy will become impure, will become tummy, right? All the food in the refrigerator will become tummy. That's what you're afraid of, that the food in the refrigerator is going to become tummy. But the guy himself will also be tummy. So he'll eat the food. Why can't he eat tummy food that became tummy from the house? The guy in the food will become tummy. If he lets him stay in the house, if the food stay in the house, they'll both be tummy, and now he can eat all his food. What are you worried about? Oh, you're worried about, let's see, the pots and pans that are in the house that are made out of metal? Good, he can stick the pots and pans in the mikvah. Why does he have to take those out? It's good, let the pots and pans become a tummy. There's an easy way to pure it. There's only one thing that can't, once it became impure, it can't become pure. What's that one thing that once it became impure can't become pure? That's earthenware vessels. Remember, we learned the other day that earthenware vessels have this very strict rule that once it became non-kosher, it can't be made kosher, and once it became impure, it has to be smashed. It can't become pure. So the Torah is worried here. Verse 36 is saying, get the earthenware vessels out of the house before the Kohen comes, in order that you shouldn't have to throw out all the earthenware vessel. So that's fascinating. Rashi and the commentators want to learn how Hashem was worried about your finances. Hashem didn't wants you to move out all the earthenware vessels just because of concern that you might have to buy new ones because they're no good, because they'll become tamei, because the Kohen might call the house tamei. So the Torah wants you to move out all your earthenware vessels from the house. So we should learn from here how careful it is Hashem is worried about our finances and our possessions, that they shouldn't go to loss. Verse 36, and the Kohen will see. So that finally you call the moving company moves it all out, especially the earthenware vessels, and he moves them out of the house, puts them in the storage unit. And the Kohen sees the leprosy, and he sees that the leprosy are on the walls of your house. On the walls of the house there is leprosy. They look sunken in, right? Like always we say, the color has to look deeper than the wall. And the yerakrakois, a very bright green. These colors look like on the clothes. Damdamois are very bright red, right? On your body it's 4 shades of white, but here it's green and dark green and dark red, bright green and bright red. Umar'e and shafam and akir, and their view is that they look like they're deeper than the wall. So, like we said by white, that they look like they're kind of going into the wall. The way the imagery is on these leprosies, like they're going into the wall. So the Kohen looks at it. The Kohen goes out of the house. El Pesach Habayis to the door. His Geras Habayis, and he locks up the house. He puts on the tape. Do not pass over. You have that yellow tape that you put on a crime scene. Don't cross. He goes and he locks up the house. Shivas Yamim, for how long? For, again, as we keep on telling you, the quarantine time period is for 7 days. So the Kohen said the furniture is out of the house is empty. The Kohen takes the emergency tape, whatever, the caution tape, he locks up the house, locks up the door, and he closes up the house. No one's allowed in for the next 7 days. The Kohen comes back on the 7th day, and he sees, goes to those green and red spots. We got a problem. The spots, these green and red spots, have started spreading throughout the walls of the house. And as we said, this is a problem. This is a clear indicator that there's an issue here. So what does the Kohen do? Again, the nuances are different than clothes and body, so let's see what it says to do by the house. The Kohen says, here's what I want you to do now. I'm still not sure there's a full problem here. I want you to remove the bricks that the leprosy is on. Take out those bricks. I guess in those days they would build with rocks and bricks. I want you to get a hammer, whatever. I want you to remove those bricks, sledgehammer, whatever it was, all the bricks that had leprosy on them. I want you to get rid of them, throw them out to a unholy place. Remember, we learned that there is sometimes places which are holy, designated as holy, that you bring the sacrifices. In some areas outside the camp are designated as unholy because these stones will cause other things to become impure. So they had that, like a cemetery, like that kind of area. They had a special area which they had, like, here you put the shamus, here you put the dead bodies, and here is the area where the impure stuff go, and we're going to put these impure bricks there because these impure bricks can contaminate and make other things spiritually impure, and therefore get rid of these bricks. We're not done yet. Verse 41. What do you do with the house? Not just do the bricks, you also trim the inside of the house, the plaster. Okay, there's plaster around the bricks, so all the plaster, not of the whole house, just the plaster that's around those bricks that got leprosy. You do a good trimming job. You take out the bricks, and then you take out the plaster that's around the bricks. That's the offer, the plaster, and all the things you take out, again, in that impure place. You got the bricks and you got the plaster that you trimmed off. You cast it all into this place. You go from the inside of the house where the leprosy is, and you take all the plaster off around the edges, and you put it into the impure place which you're going. So you do a nice cleaning job. You call in the Taras cleaning company. You don't just wash off the leprosy. You get actually rid of the bricks. But now you have holes in your wall. What do you do? So you go to the store, you go to Home Depot, and you take other bricks in its place. You get the whatever, let's say it's cinder blocks. You take the new cinder blocks, and you put those instead of the holes which were in the stones that were there before. You take new plaster. You go to Home Depot, you get plaster, and you go and you plaster up the house very nicely. You have a nice, smooth job. And what happens next will now determine if your house really has leprosy or not. So again, let's go back. Let's recap. The guy goes to the Kohen. Says, Mr. Kohen, I have this greenish, reddish blotches on my house. It looks like this is not my kid making a mess on the wall.
Wait, Rabbi, excuse me. Yeah. If you have it on your walls, you go to Home Depot, not Home Depot.
Ah, very good. Home Depot, very good. At least I know you're following, David. Very good. You go to Home Depot. That's what we say it in Russian. We say Home Depot. You go to Home Depot, and then, or to Lowe's, depends which one you like better, and you pick up your cinder blocks and your rocks and your bricks. Kenny showed us yesterday how he made a beautiful fireplace out of rocks. Very, very nice outdoor fireplace he has. Anyway, you go and you get your new bricks and you put that. Again, we're recapping the story. So the guys go to the Kohen. He shows up to Yehuda's house. He says, Yehuda, I got a problem in my house.
Yehuda, all right, Yehuda.
Yehuda, are you on here? Where's Yehuda? Yehuda, are you here with us? Okay, you got to listen what to do. So you go to Yehuda. And Yehuda comes running to your house and he takes a look at it. And you already called the people we know, van with a man. And van with a man unloads your house before the Kohen gets there. Then the Kohen will look at it and he'll say, oh boy, you got a problem here. This looks like leprosy, but we got to check it out. He locks up the house for 7 days and he sees what happens. And he sees, what did we say? That I'm sorry, he takes, wait, let's go back. So what's the story here? Let's get the storyline down. Oh, too far back. Okay. So again, you take out everything from the house. The kohen shows up and he looks at the leprosy and he sees the leprosy, that they're the right colors and they're sunken in correctly as it needs to be. Let's see what happens in the story. Kohen goes out of the house and he locks up the house for 7 days. Kohen comes back 7 days later and he sees that the leprosy is spreading. So the Kohen says, okay, next step in this procedure, get rid of those rocks, go to Home Depot, and put in new bricks. To get rid of the plastic, get rid of the bricks, put them in an unholy place, go get new stones and replace the other ones. Now, if the leprosy comes back, oh boy, on the new bricks, now you got a problem. You have this leprosy, all of a sudden on the new bricks you got, with the new plaster, you replastered the house, you put new bricks, the green and red spots are back. And it's erupting in the house. Oh my goodness gracious. After you got rid of the stones, and you took off the plaster, and now you did a replaster, respreading around, we have got an issue. So he waits another week, right? So he's so far 2 weeks in. 1 week, he locks up the house and he sees that it's still there. He takes off those stones and waits a whole another week. And guess what? He comes back. And on the second week, the new bricks have now broken out in plaster. But it depends what these leprosy looks like. So the kohen comes in, Uva kohen, the kohen sees. What does he see in the second week? After the second quarantine week. Uh-oh. The leprosy is starting to spread. So not just has the leprosy returned, now there's a long Rashi here and explain to you the details, what Rashi is telling us here. Not just has the leprosy returned, but it's viciously returned. It's spreading. It's malignant. This is malignant saras. Saras mamersi. It's growing. It's coming. You got a real problem here. Rabbi is Tameh, who this whole house is Tameh. We don't just have a brick problem here. We have a Tameh house. And they're going to actually destroy the house. I believe so. We'll see in a minute. But let's take, the whole house is now a problem because it's not the leprosy is coming back, and not just is it coming back, it's coming back viciously, malignantly, and it's spreading throughout the house. Your whole house is basically impure. But what happens, and the Torah is, we're going to learn this in the nuances, this is what Rashi tells us, what happens if it didn't start spreading? Just the same amount of red and green that was there before it came back. It didn't come back, but it's not malignant. It's not spreading. It almost sounds like, unfortunately, by cancer. This sounds like, is it just back? Or are we scared that it's like vicious? It's more. So if it's spreading more, saras guaranteed. It took us 2 weeks and we figured out you for sure have leprosy. If it's not, it's just the same kind of spot as before, we're not sure. We're going to wait a third set of weeks. So now you're ready into your third quarantine, unlike the other cases we had. Week 1, Kohen came and looked. He wants to see if maybe it'll clear itself away a week later. Week 2, the Kohen had them remove the bricks and it came back. If the same spots that were before came back and it didn't spread, again, the Kohen's unsure, he locks it up for a third week. If the third week it comes back, even though it's only the same size as before, we have Houston, we got a problem. We got an issue here because we took away the bricks once. We went to Home Depot, and we rebuilt your wall, and the leprosy came back. Then we went back to Home Depot again. We took out the bricks and put it in a third time. Now we know that your house has leprosy, even though it's not expanding. Or even if you didn't go to Home Depot, get no bricks, you just see that it's expanding, it's malignant, and then you need to get rid of this leprosy. Okay, if it didn't come back, the last option, which I didn't mention, what happens if it didn't come back the third time? So you went to Home Depot once, replaced the bricks, it came back, then you did a second shift of replacing the bricks, and it didn't come back, then your house is pure, and you're good to go. And this is the long, you'll see here, there's a very long Rashi, and this is what I just told you outside, and Rashi proves it from all the verses, how we know what I told you, but basically, again, that's the system of how we do it. I hope it's clear. System of how you know if your house has leprosy or not. It's quite extensive, and it could actually take up to 3 weeks of quarantine. After the second week, if the leprosy is spreading, guaranteed, you know right away it's leprosy. If it just comes back to say you're not sure, you lock it up for a third week. And after that third week, if it comes back, you have leprosy. If it doesn't come back after replacing the bricks twice, then you know it's not leprosy. Verse 45. So now we're talking about that after the guy realizes that the leprosy is spreading and he knows it's for sure no good. So what do? You got to knock down the whole house, not just the bricks though. The whole house is contaminated. It's like mold, you ever, it's not like mold because this is a spiritual thing. But like someone was telling me, there's actually a temple in town that they're selling the temple, a local temple. It's near Samachchter. I forget the name of it. That has mold, and it's a big problem. Someone told my wife that they have to knock down the whole building because what, there's nothing to do. The whole place is contaminated. So this spiritual sickness, this only way to fix this house is to get rid of it. You smash, destroy, you demolish the house, call in the demolishing company, those big balls, and they smash the house. It's a one of the stones, that's eights of the wood that they had, the beams in the house, that's kalafar, and all the plaster, you take all the material, you got the big dump trucks, they load it all up, and they take it outside the city to the impure place, and you pile it up there, the impure bricks from this place. Again, these bricks got to go outside the camp. And if anybody crosses the do not cross zone, they're not allowed to go into the house. If anybody goes into this contaminated house while it was closed during the quarantine, as they're waiting to see what's going to happen, guess what? Yitma, the Arav, he will become impure until the evening. You'll become impure. And Rashi tells us here that there's two, and we're going to have this now, there's two tiers to impurity. There's one tier impurity which will make you impure, but not your clothes. And there's a higher, more severe level of impurity which will contaminate you and also contaminate your clothes. So in these different impurities, which we're actually going to learn about now, depending on what level of impurity you're dealing with here, you can actually you have to go to the mikveh, and your clothes also have to go to the mikveh. So, like we have a cleaners today, they maybe have, you check off. Do you want, what's it called? Do you want an iron? Do you want it starched? Do you want it mikveh? So maybe they would take, you could have the option of the mikveh option too. You take the clothes and they would put the clothes in the mikveh. So you got to go to your local mikveh. Maybe they would have this option and you take your clothes with you and you put you and your clothes in the mikveh when it's a high level impurity. Lower level impurity, you don't have to. So Rashi tells us here, if the guy went into that quarantine home, walked in and out, just a quick visit, in and out of the house, his clothes don't need to go to the mikveh, but he needs to go to the mikveh. So he became contaminated by being in the contaminated house, right? He himself needs to go to the mikveh. It's not a long contamination that day. He could go to the mikveh right after he leaves the house, and then his clothes don't become mikveh. However, one more point. But remember, we said there's a guy that goes in to remove the plaster and the bricks. That guy doesn't become impure. You have a little bit of time. You wait a week. The guy comes in. The guy doing the service call that's removing the bricks. Or you could be doing the service call yourself that's removing the bricks and the plaster. He does not become tamei. He doesn't become impure. The impurity starts after he finishes removal of the bricks and goes to Home Depot and put in the new bricks. Then the coin locks up the house. Then the house could contaminate anything inside there. But the guy who does the service call, removing the bricks and putting in the new ones, actually does not need to go to the mikveh. So when will your clothes become contaminated? Verse 47. So 46 says, if you just come in for a quick visit to the house while it's in quarantine, Yitma Arav. He's good. How you say Yitma Arav? You only have to go yourself to the mikveh. However, you go back to the house and you take a nap there. You lay down, you go onto the couch. I guess maybe he left his couch there. He goes, and like they have those people in Hawaii that they squat, house squatting or something like that. If you lay down in this house, then not just is he impure, but Yechabes says begadav, you got to send his clothes, check off the mikvah option in the cleaner. That also has to go to the mikvah. Or if he has a meal, he sits down and has a barbecue, like a guy's night out in the house, Yechabes says begadav, does it inside the house, he also has to wash his clothes. Not just if he had a rest there or he ate there, but if he stayed there, Rashi says, long enough to the same amount of time as a rest or eating, he also would have to wash his clothes. So if you go in and out a quick visit, Torah tells you, you only got to go to the mikveh yourself. But if you relax there, or the amount of time that you would relax there to eat or to sleep, to sit down, to lay down, to rest, you would actually need to wash your clothes too. And that is a few interesting laws. We're not done yet with the laws of Taras in the house. Now what happens if the kohen comes after the second week of quarantine? So 2 weeks. First week, you saw the leprosy, he locked up the house 7 days, came back, let me see what's going on. Leprosy was still there. Then he told them, go to Home Depot, replace the bricks here, replace the cinder blocks, and they go to get new box and lock it up. And now he comes back. And what does he see now? It didn't start becoming malignant and like starting to spread after the new plaster was put on. So if he comes and it's clean and there's nothing there, comes the second week after quarantine and they replaced a week ago the new bricks, and he sees there's nothing there, but mister, your house is good. Because the leprosy has gone away. So last week it was here, you replaced the new bricks, you're good to go, you can move back into your house is not impure anymore. However, if the leprosy did come back after the second week of quarantine, you do the same process again, Rashi tells us. You go to Home Depot, you get new bricks, you take out the old bricks, and you put in the new bricks, and you wait another week, and if at the end of the third week of quarantine, the second time of removing the bricks, the leprosy comes back, even though it didn't spread and doesn't look malignant, your house is a problem because we keep on putting in new bricks and the leprosy keeps on coming back, and now we know you got a major issue, and your house is tamei, and then you're going to have to destroy the whole entire house because it keeps on coming back, even though it's not spreading. Every time we put in 2 new bricks, 2 times already, you put in 2 new bricks, and the leprosy came back as before, your house is a major issue and it has to be destroyed. So now what do you do? Okay, but when the house is, but if the house is pure, in the case where finally after the third time of locking up the house, there's no leprosy in there, you still, even though your house is pure, you still have to do a fix. You have to take 2 birds, and the same procedure as we said by the leper the other day, an interesting concoction you have to take, because you did have leprosy in your house, although it didn't come back, it was just on the bricks, when we replaced it, it didn't end up coming back, still a procedure you need to go to purify your house. Your house is good, however, you need to do the special sacrifice that we do for lepers. You take 2 birds, remember we said birds talk a lot, chirp a lot, so that tells you were talking too much, you were gossiping too much. And you got to take eitz eres, as Rashi told us. The cedar wood represents haughtiness because it's the biggest tree, which nisei last. And you take a piece of wool which has the word worm and lower yourself to teach you humility. The azav and hyssop grasses, a bunch of hyssop grasses, again to tell you to lower your ego and your gossiping, to be humble. And you do the same procedure which we learned previously, a very interesting procedure. You slaughter one of the 2 birds, a klicheres, and you pour the blood from the neck of the bird into a earthenware vessel, and in the earthenware vessel, you first put spring water, and then the blood goes in and gets mixed in and changes the color of the spring water now to red. And you take the cedar tree in a bundle, together with the azav, together with the grass, and the piece of wool, that's a tzipor achaya, and the live bird, you dip them into the blood of the first bird that was slaughtered, and you sprinkle the concoction here, the blood and the water, spring water, blood from the first bird and the spring water onto the house 7 times. And the house is clean. With the blood of the bird and the spring water, using all those items we mentioned, with the live bird and the cedar tree and the thing, and you're sprinkling it on the house with the wool, and you let the other live bird fly away. And will forgive atonement for the house, and the house will be pure. And this is this is the Torah law for all leprosy and all marks and lesions that you have. We've discussed the whole gamut of things. That's what we learned in our class this whole week. Whether your clothes has leprosy or your house has leprosy. And remember the 2 different shades. The different shades. Remember this shade of white, that shade of white. We said it really is 4. To show you the law. Which days does his purity start? Which is his impurity start? And that concludes, my friends, the whole gamut of the laws of leprosy and what are the halachas relative to them. And now we're going to start in a minute the new laws of a man who has an emission and a woman who's an nida, and the impurity and the mikvah that they need to go to. Yeah. Here. And here we go as we continue today's Chumash on the new, fascinating, new kind of impurity, which we still have relevant to today, and these halachas. Let me just share about the laws of impurity in very short today. Today, normal emission of seed that a male has also makes him impure. It's only relevant that you're not allowed to go to the Beis Hamikdash on the Temple Mount with that kind of impurity, and you have to go to the mikveh first. No one's really allowed to go there today. The rabbis don't really allow it. Therefore, it's not so relevant, these halachas for today. But it's a real thing. We're going to learn by a male that he can have a worse sickness. That is that instead of having the regular, ejaculation of semen that the male has, which will cause him to become impure and his wife to become impure too, there can also be a sickness which we're going to call a zav. It's some kind of gens, and maybe it's even a physical calamity, but a spiritual calamity where the sperm that comes out has a different quality of liquid that comes out of the male. It can either be thicker, kind of clogging up the organ, or it could be more liquidy. We're going to learn 2 shades of white. I believe he's going to say the difference is that there's an egg that was fertilized and an egg that was not fertilized, and the whiteness of the egg fertilized and not fertilized is 2 different colors. The regular shechva zera, the regular seed, has the white of an egg that was not fertilized, and the unhealthy kind is white of an egg that was fertilized. The bottom line is, if you have 3 sites of this kind of a seed, the unhealthy kind of a seed coming out, you can be impure for 7 days. For Shivas Yomim, for 7 days, the male is impure, and it's a much more serious kind of impurity. I don't remember if we say that or not, but maybe even need to bring a sacrifice. I'm not sure. We'll see that inside if we need to bring a sacrifice at the end of 7 days. So this is the regular seed, the regular time. Person has intimacy or so on. That's the regular kind of seed, which the person is tummy until the night. It needs to go to the mikvah. But then there is the unhealthy seed that comes out, and that could make, if the person sees that 3 times in a row, that could make the person impure for a week. The woman, we're going to say, has 2 kinds of blood. So first of all, it has to come from the uterus. Okay, the uterine blood. There's other times the person gets scratched, when the person wipes and goes to the bathroom. There's other kinds of bloods there. There's another kind of, the kind of blood we're talking about here is with the opening of the womb, the uterine blood, and it has to be red. The shade has to be, remember, just like by white, we're learning the different shades. Also by red, there's 5 kinds of red, and then the woman is impure. Now, there's also 2 times of impurity by the women, which means the woman every month has her period, and that is in a certain time. She knows when that is, around that time when it is. There's another time which she has her period after. Could be she'll have blood at not the right time of her period. So again, on the right time in Hebrew, it's called anida. She's having her regular period, her menstrual flow, and that would make the woman one kind of impurity. See if I can remember correctly what I'm saying. That will make the woman impure for 7 days, and if it's in the right time. Okay? If it's in the wrong time, which means she passed her period, there's an 11-day window for that to happen, and she sees blood not in the right time. It could be many different reasons why she'll see blood not in the right time of when she's expecting it. She can become that she needs to cease. Her blood will be for whatever time the blood is, and then she'll have to wait 7 days of clean days of not seeing blood. If she sees blood, she's going to have to start the 7 days over again. So if she sees blood during their period time, it's okay. She could see blood for 7 days. During that, she doesn't have to restart. As soon as she sees blood during a period, she has 7 days. I don't know how much the normal women are today that they see their period blood, but there's 7-day window of period of blood, and if she's a drop, she's impure for the whole 7 days. But then she's done right after. But if she sees in the 11 days post that window, she sees a little bit of blood, she has to wait 7 days without seeing any blood. And if she sees blood, she's got to start the 7 clean days over again. Today, just so you know, the halachically, I haven't really taught classes on mikvah, but we should all learn it and we should all know the halach as well. Today, to make it simple, the women have accepted across the board a line, just to make it so it's not complicated. I'm sharing this with us now, even though it's not what we're going to learn in the Torah, but this is the rule, the way it's done today. Anytime a woman sees blood, there's 5 days of blood. She counts 5 days. In other words, or it could continue. She sees blood on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. That's her blood days. If she sees day blood on 6, it keeps on going. 6, 7, 8. Once she finishes seeing the blood, even if she only saw blood 1 day, she still has to count 5 days of blood. Post that, the woman checks herself, makes sure she puts a cloth in, she makes sure there's no more blood, and she starts the 7 clean days. I don't want us to get mixed up. I think it's an important class for everyone that's on here, just to know these are very relevant halachas today. So hope you're listening. There's 5 days of blood and then 7 days of no blood. If she sees blood, she starts the 5 and 7. If she finished seeing the blood, she's got to see 5 blood and then 7 clean days post that point in time. Okay, so it is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's a 12-day process when a woman becomes nida. That's the way the system is today. 5 days of blood and 7 days of cleanliness. That is the thing. We don't have to differentiate based on that system which part of the month it was it in her period, was it not her period. That is the system. 5 and 7. 5 days of seeing blood and then not. Now, there will be times which a woman will see a drop of blood in her underwear and so on, and then you'll go to the rabbi, and we're not discussing that now. What is that from? Can we find an excuse? Can we find a way out? Is it the right shade of blood? That's a discussion for another time. Right now, we're just talking about the 5 and the 7. Okay. Let's continue.
How about after childbirth?
After childbirth, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Usually the woman bleeds for longer than 5 and 7. Usually what will happen is the woman will bleed for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then a month, at least a month, I think usually, and then they'll count the 7 days of cleanliness, and then they could be intimate with their husband again after that.
And then how about the first time after the wedding night?
So they will arrange any basic Jewish wedding will be arranged that the woman is not nida on the night of her wedding. They'll make sure it's they'll make sure that the woman is not going to become nida on the night of the wedding. It's a good question. What happens is that if the woman's a virgin and there is blood there, she becomes tamei after that and has to wait the 7 clean days post that. It's much more complicated, but I'm just trying to share the basics here. Again, I didn't prepare to teach a class on nida, but they are important halachas. Just to give you a basic overview. Today, it's not the actual, what we're going to learn the Chumash today is the biblical perspective of it. Today, we added more stringencies. The women took on themselves more stringencies, and that became halacha. So it's standard, it's easy, you know what the procedure is. It's 5 and 7, and that's it. But that's not what we're going to learn now in the biblical Torah about the original way of it's supposed to be done. So we're going to learn about a nida and a zava, but we're going to start with the male first. The male having an emission, and let's see what happens. Hashem speak to Moshe and Aaron saying, verse 1, God tells Moses and to tell Aaron, to tell the Jewish people, say to them, Ish, any man, any male, we're going to start with the male first, when he will have a discharge, it will make the male impure. So regular emission, usually the person's, again, regular emission, the person, it's only a 1 day period. However, if he gets the higher level of Zav, that's going to be 3 days, and it's the unhealthy seed that we're talking about, the guy is going to need a 7-day period of impurity with a sacrifice if he hits the unhealthy kind of seed that comes out. And as I mentioned, Rashi here tells us the different colors, how we know what's the unhealthy and what's the healthy. One of them, he says, is like dough of barley or something, some kind of a color that comes out. Or a way he says is it's like a fertilized egg. The white of a fertilized egg is one shade, and that's the shade this looks like, because the regular case of seed is like the unfertilized egg, and that's the healthy kind of a seed. That's what Rashi tells us here. So when a man has this emission, Zois tia tumasai, this should be his impurity. This is how we should deal with him. Zoivai, with his omission. Ror, bisarai, as zoivai. So it's clear. Ror means it's clear in appearance. It has this clearer appearance than the regular, I guess. As zoivai, oi hechtim bisari. So either it's, I guess, discharging, coming out too liquidy than it normally would, or it's thicker than it normally is. He is impure. So it could either be thicker than usual, it's blocking his membrane, or it's clearer and it's more, I think it's more liquiding out, it's flowing out more than it should. This is considered the unhealthy kind of discharge. And if he sees it 3 times, Rashi tells us, he has to take this more serious level of impurity, and he's tummy for 7 days, and he needs to make a sacrifice. Also, he makes other things impure. In other words, not just does he in a high level of impurity, but his level of contamination of making other things impure is higher. So I believe the regular guy who had a regular emission, healthy 1 day, 1 time thing, touches something else, he will make that other thing impure by touching it. But there's other ways. You could sit on something, you could carry something. The guy with the regular emission will only make impure if he touches and moves something. If he touches and moves, it'll make it impure, whatever he touches. But the guy in the higher level of impurity, like we're going to see, has various different ways carrying. We're going to see it right now, the various ways, the higher level of impurity. The guy who had 3 visions of seeing this unhealthy discharge coming out will now make other things impure on a higher level. So here we go, verse 4. Kol hamishkav, the higher level of impurity guy. Any things he sits on, that's made to be sitting on, a chair or a couch, maybe your chair in your car, your seat in your car, a bed, whatever, your couch, your recliner. Asher yishkav alav azav, that this guy who saw the impurity for 3 times, Yitma will make those items that he sat on impure. He didn't touch them or move them. He sat on it. They'll become impure. So mishkav is a laying thing, and yeshav alav, and sitting on it, is a sitting thing. So recliners, chairs, beds, whatever it is, by sitting on it and laying on it when they're meant to be laid on. That if you lay on a table, it won't become impure because it's not meant to be laid on. But using items that you sit on and lay on, you will, if you're a zav, you will, okay, the term is zav, seeing it 3 times, you will make those items impure. And then what happens? So you made them impure. Someone else comes and he touches the couch that you sat on. You're now have a trouble. You got a problem. Because that chair is really tummy. He sat on it and he made it the full, it's called the Av, the father of impurity. If you touch it, you're going to become impure, and not just are you going to become impure, your clothes will even become impure. Remember I said when it's a higher level of impurity, you make your clothes impure too. So a guy who was a zav, who had the 3 times emission, sat on a couch, you came, you touched the couch, the cleaning lady came and pushed the couch around to move it, didn't even sit on it, just moved it, you and your clothes now will become impure. And you have to go to the mikvah, but you don't become 7 days impure like the mission that the guy had. It's a one day shot impurity, and you have to go to the mikvah and so on. Now, I don't know if I'm saying correctly. Let's see. Let's go on. It's a little complex halachas. Hopefully, I might make a mistake or 2, but I'll get 90% of it correct. Let's go on. What happens if you sit? You didn't touch, but you sit on the same seat that the impure guy sitting on now. You're not touching the impure guy. There's a bench. There's a park bench. The guy is walking around. He's not telling. He didn't tell anyone to begin with. Sits on a park bench. The guy sits down next to him on a park bench. Even though you didn't touch him, you just sat on the same bench that he sat on. You become impure too. You never touched him, and you will become impure too, and your clothes will become impure too. And he says something interesting. What happens if you put layers on that couch? You never saw those couches where they put plastics on top of it to protect the couch. Some houses, like you feel very uncomfortable on the. I don't know if you ever want to. Yeah, maybe someone here in the class has the kind of couch. I remember that's the houses they put on old 6 plastics. You can never enjoy the couch, but you're guaranteed the couch will never get dirty. It doesn't matter. You're sitting on the couch. I don't care how many layers it has. You're using the couch to lay on, to sit on. You will become impure, even though this pile up, it's under you somewhere, and you're using it to rest your weight on somewhere underneath. The people who meditate and they say, feel the ground, feel the chair that's filling the ground, whatever. It's under you, it's supporting you, and therefore, no matter how many layers there are, the person sitting on it will become impure. Okay. And if you touch the skin of the impure person, you touched him, you shook his hand maybe, you wash your clothes, you have to put yourself in the mikvah, but if I understand correctly, your clothes don't have to go to the mikvah at that point in time. So it seems like there's a little bit more of a stringency sitting on something or carrying something because it's really becoming one with you. You're sitting on it or you're carrying it. But if you just touch the guy, you shook his hand, then that will only contaminate you, but it would not contaminate your clothes. So again, as I'm saying, there's different levels here. Sitting, carrying, touching. We're going to go through, the Torah is going to go through. And if something funny happens, the guy spits. Hazav b'tahar, he spits on a clean person. He gets angry. He's like, by corona, some people wanted to keep people away from them. So I got corona. So the guy goes and he spits on someone that's pure. Now you're carrying the guy's spit. Carrying is worse than touching. Or even if you touch the spit, he says here, or you carried it, you become impure and you have to wash your clothes and you're impure until the evening. So not just does the guy make you impure, but the things that come out of it, we'll see soon, even his urine or different things that come out of the guy, the spit will make it come from the guy who's impure, will also make you impure if you touch it or carry it and so on. Now, he's going to bring one more case. So far we have chairs you sit on and beds you lay on. Then we had touching the person or touching the spit. And now he brings a saddle as one more case. The saddle. In the olden days, they used to use saddles a lot. That they would sit on the saddle of the horse. Even not just the saddle that's under him, but sometimes there's also like other things coming out of the saddle. It's like a handle that you hold the saddle up. When you put it on the horse, the handle, even though it's not directly under the guy who's impure sitting on it, the handle will become impure too. So the entire saddle will become impure, even though he's not sitting on the handle part of it. Okay, so verse 9 tells us that not just does the couch and the bed become impure, but even the saddle and all the parts of the saddle, you are still impure. So spit, if you touch it or you carry it, even if you don't actually touch the spit, again, you're carrying it, it's on your shoulder, you're carrying it in some way, you're impure. And also the saddle, even the handle of the saddle, it's not being directly sat out, takes the impurity. And then if you go and touch the saddle, you yourself become impure. So if you carry it, so if you touch it, only you have to go to the mikveh. It somehow passes over a lesser level of impurity that just you got to go to the mikveh. If you carry it, you're actually supporting it. You have to go to the mikveh, and your clothes also have to go to the mikveh too. And you go to the mikveh, and you will be impure until the evening. Okay, as I explained. And carrying could be anything. It doesn't have to mean just the saddle. He says his spit or his sperm or urine, all these things, they will make the person impure if he's somehow carrying them. And whoever, the guy who's impure, what about him touching someone else? And he never went to the mikveh, and he never put his clothes in the mikveh. Before he went to the mikveh, and while he's still impure, he goes and starts touching people. Like the cooties, you're it, he starts making them impure. Then those people he touched have to go to the mikveh, and they will be impure until the morning. And I just want to share with you a very interesting halacha that we learn here, according to Rashi, we learn here in Jewish law. When you go to the mikveh, the water has to touch every part of your body. Well, what about your mouth? The water is not going inside your mouth. What about your nose? The water is not going inside your nose. It's not touching everywhere. So we learn from here, Rashi tells us that only the areas in your body which those closed areas, your mouth basically does not have to be open. You don't have to let water up your nose when you go into the mikvah. Those areas do not need water. Only the normal, regular areas, which you completely have water around you, do they need to go to the mikvah. But however, an interesting halacha is also learned from, very interesting halacha. If a woman goes to the mikvah, which it's much more serious than a man today going to the mikvah, she has to make sure her teeth are clean. She'll brush her teeth and floss very well before she goes into the mikvah. Even though she doesn't open her mouth and let the water go inside her mouth, she has to make sure that if water would have gone inside her mouth, it could have touched everywhere, even though she's closing her mouth when she goes to the mikvah. Therefore, if she had meat stuck in her teeth when she went to the mikvah, even though the water is not going inside her mouth, that would make her non-kosher. And those are some of the things that the commentaries, the Gemara brings based on this verse. And every earthenware vessel, if you touched an earthenware vessel, right, you have to break it. You can't. There's no remedy for earthenware vessel. However, wooden vessels go into the mikvah, and they're a way that you can stay protected of the mikvah. Yeah, David, you wanted to say something?
No.
You're with me, okay? So let's okay. So let's go over this again. The guy has to go to the mikvah just on Rashi on the last verse. Ira, you with us? Hope he didn't put you to sleep. Okay. The guy counted 7 days because he needs to count 7 days, but he never went to the mikveh. It doesn't help. He has to go to the mikveh, Rashi says. And the mouth doesn't need to go in the mikveh, but the mouth has to be cleaned as if water was going there, and if the mouth has pieces of meat inside it, it won't be kosher and won't be considered like he went to the mikveh. And earthenware vessels, Rashi tells us, if you touch it from the outside, only if you move it, not just touch it without moving it, but if you move it, only then does the earthenware become vessel, and the earthenware vessel needs to be smashed because there's no remedy for earthenware vessel becoming impure. Now the guy the man with the discharge becomes pure. And what does he do? So basically he stops seeing the seed stop. You're going to wait till the discharge stops. And then you're going to count the 7 days till it becomes pure again. Then he'll go to the mikvah and he's going to clear his clothes. On the 8th day, he'll take 2 birds, the younger doves or the older doves, before Hashem, to the door of the Beis Hamikdash, to the Mishkan, and the Sanim Elokayim will give to the Kohen. One of those birds will be for a sin offering. One of them will be for a burnt offering, like we learned about the different offerings. And the Kohen will forgive him before Hashem from this unhealthy emission that the person had. We have one more Aliyah. We're going to do Shabbos as Aliyah now. Who's with us? I need to see who's with me. I need to hear who's with me before we go on. Ira, you still following? I know it's like it sounds like a medical school over here, kind of, okay? Evan, you with us? Hey, Yal.
I'm here.
You're with us. Okay, let's go on.
I'm here. I'm with you.
Okay, good. What about a man when he has a regular emission? He goes to the mikvah, it's called Psari V'Tamei Arev, and he goes to the mikvah and he's impure until the evening. That's the normal way it works. Any clothes that the guy was wearing, any clothes that had some of the semen on it, some of the seed on it, whatever got it, the towel, whatever it was, those two have to be put in the mikvah, and they're impure until evening. Isha, what about a woman? Now we're going to go back. We're going to talk about the laws of a woman. We're getting to there now. So Yishkav Ish Oisa, where she has intimacy with her husband. Shechva Zera, and there's seed there. The woman actually has to go to the mikvah too. Although the seed goes right inside the woman, doesn't touch her skin, doesn't touch the outside of her body, and therefore technically she shouldn't be tamei, but Hashem is making a decree that by intimacy, where the seed of the man goes into the woman, the woman will become tummy and will need to go to the mikvah. So every time there's intimacy and the woman wants to go to the Beis Hamikdash afterwards, she has to go to the mikvah. Verse 19, the Isha Kisiya Zav Dama, Zayva Bibsara Shivas Yamim. Now we're going to talk about the rules of a woman. What if a woman, when she will have Zava Dama, if the woman sees blood, and Rashi tells us it has to be red, it has to be the right color. And there is 5 different colors that it needs to be, just like by the white saras, there are 5 reds that it needs that will make her impure. And it's only if the blood comes from her uterus, not any kind of cut that she gets from anywhere else, even if it's from that area, but it's not uterine blood, it's not a problem. So Shivas Iya Dam Iya Zaiva Bibsara Shivas Yamim Tia Benidasa, she will be considered a nida in her time of her period. She will consider to be a separation. She will have to have a separation. Whenever it touches her, will have to be impure until the evening. And like by the man who was a zav, same rules. Anything she sits on, anything she lays on, reclines on, benidasa, while she's a nida, Yitma will become impure. Anything she sits on will become impure. And then if someone goes and touches what she reclined on, will not just, they will have to go to the mikveh themselves, but they'll also have to wash their clothes in the mikveh. They'll be impure themselves until the night. So anything that the impure person sat on or laid on, and you touch it, you have to wash your clothes and go to the mikveh. But if they touch, they don't, anyone who touches it and what she sits on has to go to the mikvah, but doesn't have to wash their clothes. So depending again, if it's a saddle, which is what we're talking about, the different items, which how far will the impurity get your clothes impure to? But if he sits and things she sits on, they will also become impure. So various ways that you become impure. Verse 24, we'll just go through quickly. So what happens if the man and woman have intimacy and she's during this point in time, which of course they're not allowed to? The husband himself now will become impure, but not for 1 day, but for 7 days. Just like the woman became impure for 7 days, he has to now consider his own 7 days of impurity. Anything he sits on will become impure. What happens if the woman sees blood not at the time of her period, but during the 11 days post the time that she's not supposed to see her period? Then she has her unclean discharge, just like the days of a nida, and she has to have 7 days of purity following it. Okay, I'm just going to go through quickly. Anything she's going to lay on, she's going to sit and is going to become impure, just like it became impure, like we said, when she has her blood at the time of her period. Whoever touches them will become impure. They'll have to wash their clothes, and they'll be tummy until the evening. And if she becomes clean of the discharge, it stops coming, then she has to count 7 clean days, and then she is impure. So the blood will come however long it comes, and then she'll have to wait 7 clean days. Yom Shmini, on the 8th day after she experienced this discharge at its irregular time, just like the man did take 2 young doves or older doves, brings them to the to the door of the Mishkan. One of the birds will be a sin offering, one of them will be a burnt offering. And the Kohen will forgive for her from her Zava experience. And he finishes, you should warn the Jewish people, because God forbid no one should come into the temple when they are impure, because as Rashi says, it's excursion, it's cutting off from Hashem if they, God forbid, enter the temple without being careful with these laws. These are the laws of the male has emission, or he has his regular emission, tamaba, of how you become impure. Whether it was he had a one-time emission, 2 times, or 3 times, it makes a difference depending on how many times he had the emission. V'adava, or the woman, binidasa, or the woman when she has her menstrual flow, v'azav zoivai, or l'zachul and a keva, whether the male saw it once or twice or 3 times, or the woman saw it once or twice or 3 times during the 11 days when she's not supposed to get a period, or when a male will be with a female at the time when she's impure. All these things are discussed in this parsha, and we've concluded the laws of Tazria Mitzaira of when a person has these impurities. Okay, thank you all for joining me. Sorry guys if this was a little bit